Hi, I'm Irma Francis, and I'd like to share a little bit about what has inspired me to do the work that I do. At a very young age, I had what I would call a soul awakening, where there was a realization that I have a human self and I also have a divine self. And it was from this awakening that I began my life. This awakening happened at around 7 or 8 years old. And I became increasingly confused as to why there was so much pain and suffering in the world, because I had made an innocent assumption that everyone had this kind of awakening. I didn't even know it was an awakening. I just was awake. And so I couldn't understand why there was so much pain and suffering in the world, because from the level of soul, or or I would rather say from the awareness of soul, we live from a place of unconditional love without fear, and life is full of bliss and joy and peace and harmony, and it's perfection of the soul, totally open and whole, and not needing anything, just an awareness that we're on this earth to explore and have an adventure of the human experience. And a lot of those things I couldn't put into I couldn't communicate it. I just was it. And unfortunately, through that innocent assumption that everyone had this awakening, I invited into my experience a lot of people that kind of were pulling me down into lower vibrations of what life is about, the human condition. And it's nobody's fault. It's most people develop a kind of soul amnesia, and they forget. They forget their divine nature, and they lose a connection to that higher awareness that just leads us gracefully and blissfully through life. So once I started discovering the limitations of mass consciousness, I really didn't know what to do. I really felt like I wasn't fitting into what was seen as normal and what was expected of me, that I fit into some kind of status quo of my family and society, and whatever system I would find myself in, whether family, school system, of course, when I became an adult, my work life. And I just never gave up on finding a way to return to that soul awareness and live from that soul awareness. And eventually, after fulfilling all the expectations of adulthood, I finally had the courage to take the needed steps to return to that place of beingness, that unconditional love and beingness of soul awareness. And it's not about consuming or controlling or having agendas. It's about being open and receiving and giving love. And And there's nothing higher really on this earth. And that doesn't diminish the human experience of, our five senses and having this beautiful, wonderful human experience. But when you disconnect from what I would call absolute truth, because we get so lost and absorbed into relative truth of life, of the human experience, we start to think that thing that feels like it's missing from us is something on the external, and we start to seek and desire and try and fill up that emptiness, and we try and find it in the external, but it's not there. It's not there. It's inside of us. And that's what my work is all about. I started recording a lot of my awarenesses and experiences, and I realized a book of contemplation was taking form. And so I'm in the process of working on that. And the excuse me, the title of that book is called Soulhood, the next stage in our evolution. And I really believe that soulhood is something that's attainable. We think that adulthood, well, I don't want to assume that everyone thinks that adulthood is the last stage of our evolutionary process. I'll just say that I know that it isn't. And there is another stage. If throughout your life you haven't found a way to wake up to your soul and connect to that soul awareness, which a lot of us don't, because we do feel a need to fulfill all those expectations of adulthood. But what happened for me is when my sons were grown and off on their own, and I had left a job at a pharmaceutical company, I finally had the courage to take the needed steps to return to that soul awareness. And I would say one of the biggest steps in that return to that unconditional love and beingness is forgiveness. It's forgiving ourselves and others for not knowing what we were doing. Because when we forget that connection to what I would call God, that higher source, we can do really hurtful things to each other and to ourselves. I think one of the best definitions I've heard of forgiveness is accepting that we can't change what happened. And that's really what awakens us or reawakens us to what is right now. And that's all we really have is right now. And we can spend this right now moment in regret and resentment and holding on to the past, anticipating the future, what's going to happen. We don't know. We don't know, do we? There's such a great peace that comes with the acceptance of of what is. And sometimes it can be hard to get to that place and to stay in that place, because when something happens that makes us uncomfortable in some kind of way, or we have a tendency to become victims or feel like a victim of something happening to us. But as long as we can align ourselves with the truth of the only thing I really have control over is my own thoughts, feelings, and actions. And that's very empowering. It's very empowering. And from this place of being present in this moment, unless something's coming at you in some way trying to cause you harm, which there are those things in this life, but are they happening right now? In the stillness of this moment, we have love, we have peace, we have harmony, and we have presence. Many years ago, I read a book by Marianne Williamson called A Return to Love. And, that book really sums up a lot of what I'm trying to say in this video. So if you get a chance, read that book, because we can do that. We can return to love, and not the love of the romantic movies and codependent relationships, but an unconditional love, a love of beingness. Well, we're not trying to make anything happen. We're honoring ourselves, and we're honoring the people that cross our paths. So that's a little bit about what I wanted to share, and what inspired me to do the work that I do, because the experiences that come with those higher dimensional awarenesses of what I call soulhood, it just makes all the human experiences of the five senses, it just magnifies all that. It just brings space to all of that. And there's a great freedom in soulhood. You aren't trying to become something or someone anymore, because the truth is you always were somebody of worth, divine worth. So feel free to call me, email me, contact me through my website, and we can talk more and see what we have to share with each other about this thing called soulhood. So, in the meantime, may you live in the comfort and the light and the love of grace.